My name is Lily and I am 8 years old, almost 9, and I live in a small town in Vermont where the snow piles up high like soft white mountains in winter and the leaves turn into fiery rainbows in the fall. Every single morning, no matter what the weather, I would wake up to the sound of the mail truck rumbling down our quiet street. It wasn't just any sound. It was the sound of Mr. Henderson, our mailman. He was more than just a man who delivered letters and packages. He was a daily ray of sunshine. He always had a big smile and a wave, and sometimes, if he had a few extra seconds, he would even stop to say hello and ask about my latest drawing. He knew everyone's name, not just mine, but my mom's and dad's and even our old dog, Gus. He'd bring treats for Gus sometimes, and always had a kind word for Mrs. Gable down the street, who was very old and sometimes lonely. He didn't just drop the mail, he seemed to deliver a little bit of happiness with each envelope, a warm connection in our sometimes chilly Vermont mornings. My parents work very hard, Dad at the lumber mill and Mom at the local diner, so things are sometimes a little tight, and they worry about grown-up things I don't always understand. But Mr. Henderson's smile was a small, dependable comfort, like the smell of wood smoke from our chimney. I loved watching him, his blue uniform always neat, his truck a familiar splash of white and red against the greens and whites of our landscape. I often dreamed of being like him one day, bringing smiles to people's faces, connecting everyone. Then, one Tuesday, after the last of the autumn leaves had fallen and the first thin ice was forming on the puddles, something changed. Mr. Henderson didn't smile when he dropped off our mail. His shoulders seemed to slump a little and he didn't even wave at Gus. Later that evening, I overheard my parents talking in hushed voices. "Budget cuts," Mom whispered. "The Postal Service is reorganizing. They're cutting some of the smaller routes. Mr. Henderson's route is on the list." My heart felt like it had dropped right into my shoes. Cutting his route? That meant he wouldn't be our mailman anymore. He might even lose his job or have to move very far away. The thought was like a sudden, cold gust of wind on a sunny day. Who would deliver Mrs. Gable's letters from her grandchildren? Who would bring our holiday cards? Who would bring that little bit of daily warmth to our street? And who would I share my drawings with? A knot formed in my tummy. I felt a confusing mix of sadness for Mr. Henderson and a deep fear about this big, scary change. My internal nemesis, a tiny voice in my head, whispered that I was just a kid, that big things like the Postal Service and budget cuts were for grown-ups, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing I could do. The world felt suddenly much bigger and colder, and I felt very, very small. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every day I saw Mr. Henderson, his smile a little less bright, and my worry grew. I tried talking to my mom. "Can't we just tell them they made a mistake?" I asked, my voice small. Mom sighed and hugged me tight. "It's not that simple, sweetie," she said. "Sometimes big organizations have to make hard choices." My dad tried to explain it using words like efficiency and overhead, but all I heard was that Mr. Henderson was going to be gone. The little voice in my head, my internal nemesis, kept saying, "See? Nothing you can do." But deep down, something else, a tiny spark, wouldn't let me give up completely. I decided I had to try something. I pulled out my special sparkly pen and my best stationery, the kind with little flowers on the edges. I decided to write a letter. I started with "Dear Postal Service Headquarters," which I thought sounded very official. I wrote about how kind Mr. Henderson was, how he knew Gus, how he checked on Mrs. Gable. I even drew a picture of him smiling and waving with little hearts floating around him. I sealed it carefully and asked Mom to mail it. Days turned into a week, then 2. No answer. I wrote another letter, making it even longer, adding details about how he always made sure our newspaper wasn't wet, even when it rained. Still no reply. My parents saw me trying so hard, and they looked a little sad. Mom said, "It's very sweet of you, Lily, but sometimes these decisions are just final." The other kids at school didn't really understand. "Why does it matter who brings the mail?" my friend Sam asked, shrugging. Their indifference felt like another setback. I felt so alone in my fight. Then the worst thing happened. Mr. Henderson himself confirmed it. He stopped at our mailbox one day, looking very tired. "It's official, Lilybug," he said, using his special nickname for me. "My last day on this route is going to be 2 weeks from Friday." He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "They're going to have a new system. Different people delivering on different days. No more steady routes." He explained how he had tried to fight it too, but he was told it was out of his hands. He was being transferred to a bigger town, a much busier route, far away from the quiet streets of our small town. My heart sank to my feet. All my letters, all my hopes had been for nothing. I had fought as hard as an 8-year-old could, and I had failed. The internal nemesis shouted now, loud and clear. You are too small, too young, too unimportant. You can't change anything. I felt a terrible ache, a mix of sorrow and frustration. I went to my room, threw my sparkly pen on my desk, and stared out the window at the now bare trees. It felt like the whole world was against us, against Mr. Henderson, and against every small, kind thing. I wanted to give up entirely. The next morning, I was still feeling heavy and sad. I watched Mr. Henderson's truck approach, knowing each day brought him closer to leaving. As he walked past Mrs. Gable's house, I saw him pause. He didn't just put her mail in, he walked up to her porch, saw her peeking through the curtain, and waved, staying a moment longer, a look of genuine care on his face. In that moment, something clicked inside me. It wasn't just about the mail, it was about the connection. He wasn't just a mailman, he was part of the fabric of our town. My letters had been good, but maybe they weren't loud enough. Maybe they didn't explain just how much he meant to everyone. Just then, Mrs. Gable slowly opened her door, a worried expression on her face. "Mr. Henderson," she called out, her voice shaky, "I heard the news. What will we do without you?" Mr. Henderson just shook his head sadly. This was it. I couldn't just write a letter to headquarters anymore. I needed to write a letter to everyone. I needed to make the town speak. I ran inside, my mind racing. I pulled out a huge piece of paper, an old poster board from school, and my thickest markers. I started to draw not just a picture of Mr. Henderson, but pictures of him helping people, pictures of his smile, pictures of our street without his truck. I wrote in big, bold letters, "Save Mr. Henderson. Our mailman is important." I started to list all the reasons, just like in my letters, but this time I tried to use words that would make grown-ups understand, words like community and neighbor. My little fingers were getting tired, but I kept going. As I was finishing my poster, my next-door neighbor, Mr. Harrison, who was a retired teacher and always had a gentle smile, saw me through the window. He came over, tapping lightly on the door. "Lily, what's all this commotion?" he asked, seeing my poster spread out on the kitchen table. I explained everything, my voice thick with emotion, telling him about Mr. Henderson and the last day deadline. Mr. Harrison listened patiently, his eyes thoughtful. When I finished, he didn't say it was impossible. Instead, he said, "Lily, you've got a very important message here, but we need to make sure everyone sees it, and not just sees it, but feels it." He took my poster and gently laid it flat. "How about we make a big petition? We can get everyone in town to sign it. We can write a letter to the editor of the local newspaper, explaining exactly what Mr. Henderson means to us. We can even call the local radio station." My eyes widened. A petition? The newspaper? The radio? This was way bigger than I had imagined. Mr. Harrison helped me draft a new, very formal letter, but we made sure to include all the stories I had told him, the ones about Mr. Henderson's kindness and how he was more than just a job. He helped me make copies of the petition, and together we went door to door. I told everyone my stories, and Mr. Harrison explained the official part. People listened. They nodded. They shared their own stories of Mr. Henderson's kindness. Mrs. Gable cried happy tears when she signed. Soon, almost everyone in our little town had signed the petition, and many had written their own short notes about Mr. Henderson. The local newspaper ran our story on the front page, with a picture of me holding my original poster, and the radio station interviewed Mr. Harrison and even me, a little bit, though I was very shy. The mayor even heard about it and offered his support. The day before Mr. Henderson's last day, the entire town was buzzing. And then, it happened. The post office headquarters called the mayor. The overwhelming response from our small town, the petition, the newspaper stories, the radio interviews, it had made them rethink. They had never realized how much a single mail carrier could mean to a community. They decided to keep Mr. Henderson's route. Not only that, they said they were going to explore a community mail carrier program for other small towns, inspired by our story. On what was supposed to be his last day, our town threw a surprise party for Mr. Henderson. It was held in the town square, decorated with banners that said, "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," and "Lily Saves the Day." There was music, food, and everyone was there. Mr. Henderson was so surprised, tears streamed down his face. He hugged me so tight I thought I might pop. The mayor gave a speech, and even Mr. Harrison spoke about how one small voice, full of hope and kindness, could move mountains. I stood there, watching Mr. Henderson laugh and talk with everyone, seeing his smile back to its brightest, and my heart felt full to bursting. From that day on, life returned to a new kind of normal. Mr. Henderson still delivers our mail, his truck still rumbles down our street, but now when I see him, I know something extra special. I know that even an 8-year-old girl can make a difference. I learned that my voice matters and that kindness and connection are powerful, truly powerful things. That tiny internal nemesis that told me I was too small, it doesn't whisper anymore. Now, I see problems and I think, what can I do? I started a kindness club at school where we write letters to lonely people and help clean up our local park. I always try to lend a hand to Mrs. Gable when I see her struggling with groceries. Mr. Henderson still stops to say hello, and he always has a special nod just for me. Sometimes, he even winks. The best part. Years later, when I was older, I heard that the community mail carrier program had indeed taken off in other small towns across the country, all because a little girl in Vermont refused to let kindness disappear. And every time I hear that familiar rumble of his truck, I remember that sometimes, the biggest changes come from the smallest, most hopeful hearts, proving that things truly do get better, especially when we stand together.